Over the past few weeks, we have been working on the writing process, and since we have officially published our stories and shared them with the class, it is now time to reflect on everything that we've been doing, what we've learned, what we did well, and what we need to improve. So just to recap, we have been focusing on the writing process, which includes 5 steps. It's pre-write, draft, revise, edit, and publish. And the reason we did this unit first is because these are skills that we are going to continue using throughout the entire year and with every single paper or project that we complete. So it's really important that we have learned these skills and that we can continue to apply them throughout the year. So I wanted to go over each step of the writing process again in a little bit more detail and then describe how that connects to what we've been doing in class. So the first stage of the writing process is pre-writing. And how we practice that in class is by listening to read-alouds that I would read to you guys during class, and then we would use that as inspiration for our own stories. Remember, I would read a story, and then we would discuss in table groups what similar stories could we write using the story that we just heard as inspiration. And then we would discuss it in our table groups, and then you would come up with some on your own in your notebook. We also thought about our life experiences and how we might be able to use that for a story, and then of course through a lot of discussion. So we used books as inspiration, we used our life as inspiration, and then we used each other in the discussions we had in class as inspiration. So that is how we focused on learning how to pre-write. The second step of the writing process is the draft. So every time we would listen to a read aloud, brainstorm story ideas, we would pick one of those ideas and then practice writing a draft. So throughout the unit and all the weeks that we've been working on the writing process, we had multiple drafts that we could pick from that you could select to take through the writing process. So just to review so far, we would come up with all sorts of ideas in the pre-write stage for things that you might write about. In the draft stage, we wrote multiple drafts that you could pick from, and then eventually you picked one of those drafts to take through the writing process. And then we spent a couple days adding to that story so that way you had more of your draft developed, and then we moved into the revision stage. In the revision stage of the writing process, we worked on adding sentences and words, specifically sensory words, sensory information, details, descriptive language, and then we worked on adding new and interesting words. We also worked on removing words or sentences that you didn't need, so specifically overused words or things that didn't make sense to the story. We also worked on moving a word or placement of a sentence, so reorganizing our ideas. And then we also looked at substituting words or sentences for new ones. We spent about a week in the revision stage, and then we moved on to the editing stage. So in the editing stage, we focused on capitalizing, so we made sure that names, places, titles, and months were all capitalized in our story. We spent a lot of time reviewing that the first letter of a word in a sentence needs to be capitalized, and especially proper nouns and the pronoun I. We looked at usage, so are we using nouns and verbs correctly? We looked at punctuation, so did we end each sentence with a period? If we had dialogue, did we use quotes, commas, semicolons, apostrophes? And then we also looked at spelling. Did we have everything spelled correctly? And if there was a word that we didn't know how to spell, what are some strategies that we could use to figure out how to spell that word? Just recently we moved into the publishing phase, so we made sure that our stories looked neat. We tried to limit the amount of errors because we wanted it to look as perfect as possible for publication and to have it be readable. And then we shared our stories with the class. So that's what we've been learning for the past month. And like I said before, these are skills that you need to know because we are going to use them throughout the entire year. And honestly, these are things that you're going to use throughout your entire life. So even if you struggled a little bit initially, throughout the year you'll get enough practice that you'll become an expert in this. So now that we've finished that unit, remember I talked a lot at the beginning of the year that it's always important to reflect on your learning. When we did our Why Right project, we reflected on how we did and we gave ourselves a grade. We used that rubric and circled the scores that we thought we earned. So it's important to do this because reflection gives learning new meaning. It helps you know what you actually learned. It focuses on what you did well and you can recognize yourself for that. But it also helps you identify what you might still need to practice. So the first time you self-assessed and reflected on your learning, like I just said, it was after the Why Right project. And the way we did that at first was I gave you guys a rubric and then you just circled your score. After I reflected on how that went, I felt like I could do it differently to help you guys be more successful because I felt like the first time we did that it was a little confusing. So instead of giving you that paper copy of the rubric, I put it in a Google form for you to check instead of circling on a hard copy. You'll be able to access this form through Google Classroom. And the way it works is I have each part of the rubric as a question. So you're going to select the score that reflects your ability shown through your writing process draft. So thinking of the paper that you turned in, you're going to check if you think that it showed a certain skill. So can you produce writing that's clear? Can you use accurate spelling, grammar, and punctuation? So if you're like, yeah, my draft did show that, then you would select a 4. If you think, some parts were unclear because of mistakes, then you would check a 3. If you think that it was very unclear because of a lot of mistakes, then you would check a 2. If you thought that the draft that you turned in wasn't very clear at all and you had to have a lot of help, then you could select a 1. If you didn't turn in anything, then you would click a 0. So that's how you are going to complete this form. So that's how you are going to self-assess this time. If you need to have your draft open so that way you can reference it to see, did I actually show that skill? Feel free to do that. But just to review, you're going to read each question and read the skills that you should have been able to show through your paper, and then check the one that you think your paper demonstrates. There were 3 different standards that were practiced through your writing process draft, so each page assesses that standard. So if you look up at the top, it'll show which standard I am focusing on, and then below is the rubric that I used to assess this standard, but I just broke it down for you. So the first 3 pages of this form is all about assessing the 3 standards that were practiced through the writing process draft. The 4th page has all the different skills that were learned by doing this assignment. So this is just a simple checklist. What you need to do is select the skills that you feel like you have effectively used and mastered. You can check more than one. If you feel like you can do all these things, then you are just going to check every single box. I want you to be honest. So if there's something that you are still confused about, that you feel like you didn't really do well in your paper, that you feel like you need me to reteach you, then just leave it blank. This isn't graded. This is just to help me know what you have learned and what we still need to work on. On this page, I want you to write what you did well on the assignment. And then I also want you to write what you need to improve to do better in our next unit, which is the personal narrative unit. Not only is this important to me to help know where you are in your learning and your ability to reflect, but it should also be helpful to you to think, well, what did I do well? Was I focused as I worked? Or was it the day before our drafts were due and I realized, oh no, I don't have anything? Or maybe you were thinking, oh, I did well working on my own, But if there was something I was confused about, I didn't really ask for help, so then I just skipped over that part in my writing process draft, so then it's not in there, so I didn't score very well on that specific skill. So maybe that's something that you want to improve for next time. So be honest. This helps me. This is what the final page looks like. So you are going to give yourself an overall score for this assignment. Remember, we use standards-based grading, so a scale of 1, 2, 3, and 4. A score of 4 means that you have mastered all of the standards. A score of 1 means that you needed a lot of help, and even with that help, you still struggle to understand the standard and apply those skills. Then you are going to give your work ethic and focus an overall score. So again, be honest with yourself, because there's no point in not being honest. I observed you as you work. So if you are someone who the night before the paper was due still was not finished, then you should not give yourself a 4. If you worked hard every single day, you took advantage of all the class time that was given to you, and you got multiple pages done, you worked very hard on your draft, then you would give yourself a 4. And if you think back to maybe it was the 3rd day of school, I told you a story about a time when my professor had us write things going on in our life so that way they could take it into consideration as they assessed our work. So that is how you are going to address this question. I want to know, is there anything that I should know about as I grade your work? Was there a lot going on in your life? Were you feeling distracted? What do I not know that I need to know in order to fairly assess your work? As we get into our next unit, which is personal narrative, I want to know what you're worried about, because that will help me as your teacher. And then lastly, I want to know what I can do to help support you and teach you better as we move forward and start our work with personal narratives. So, for example, if you want a hard copy of something, let me know that. Or if you are someone who appreciates having the PDFs in Google Classroom, then let me know that that's something that you enjoy, so that way I keep doing it. I just want to know what works for you, so that way I can either start doing it or I can keep doing it, so that way I'm always supporting you as a learner. So once you finish that, you'll click Submit. So please be honest as possible, be reflective. Remember, the importance of doing this helps you know what you learned, what you did well, and what you can do to improve next time. It also helps me as your teacher to know what skills you understand, what might be missing, so that way I can reteach it to you, and what I can continue to do or start doing to support you as we go into our personal narrative unit.